what is the status of hockey in the UK right now? Is it growing? Because obviously there's soccer, that's a big impact in the UK, rugby. What are your thoughts on
Cricket.
that? Cricket,
Cricket, yeah,
yes.
cricket's a big one as well.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if
hockey growing.
KHL hockey is. Sorry, I don't know if KHL hockey is versus NHL hockey in terms of the UK. Like,
So if we're talking about so to answer your question, the growth of the sport, it is growing, but very slowly. Is kind of the answer I would give. We are getting there. It's really baby steps. We, for example, Team Great Britain were in the top flight of the World Championships. We were there, not this last year because of the tournament was cancelled, obviously, but 2019, the first time we were there since 1994. And it was the first time we had a roster full of predominantly English-born and English-trained players, which 1994 is a lot of dual nationals that were on the team. So that's an achievement in itself. So we're like, that's great. We managed to beat France and stay up in the tournament. There's no relegation this year as far as I'm aware. So we're going to have 3 tournaments on the trot that we're in the top flight of international hockey, in the best international hockey tournament bar the Olympics in the world. So clearly there's been some progress there over the last 5, 10, 15 years to get us to this position. It's interesting to note, though, that our professional league, our semi-professional, the Elite Ice Hockey League, the EIHL, is the only league, I'm pretty sure, out of the big ones in Europe that didn't have a season this year because we didn't have the infrastructure. And obviously the COVID situation in the UK has been pretty terrible for the most part. Not the worst, but certainly not the best by any stretch. So yeah, they decided, and because our league is one of the lower ones down the pecking order of European hockey, there's not so much the infrastructure there. There isn't so much the finances there to be able to fund the full season, especially the way some of the chairmen of respective franchises in the league put it. They need to have at least 80% capacity to even break even on game day, and that's just simply not possible in the current situation that we're in, is it? So it's growing slowly, but the good news is we have had some hockey in the UK recently. There's a couple of the lower tier leagues that were given funding by the government. It was there was some funding initially offered to the Elite League, but it came in the form of loans instead of grants, which would have meant they would have been able to put a season on, but it would have meant that they would have had to have paid back all that money, and it probably could have bankrupted the league in a couple of seasons because they just don't have the money and the infrastructure there. And that's predicated on the fact that everything goes back to normal. They could still bankrupt themselves on that. So they've decided short term, we lose the season. Long term, the league might actually survive for another 5-10 years, which as a fan of the league, yeah, it sucks that we didn't get an Elite Ice Hockey League season this year, but if it means that the sport and the league survives, I'll take it in a heartbeat. Like it's the right decision to make, all things considered. So, but yeah, we've got a couple of teams lower down. It's the Elite Ice Hockey League, then it's the NIHL, the National Ice Hockey League, is kind of the second tier in the UK because there's teams based in Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland. So it's kind of all of the. That's why we call it the UK as opposed to England specifically. So yeah, we've had some a couple of teams in Sheffield and Nottingham have got started. They've had like streaming series, and they got some funding by the government to like weekly testing and things like that. So there's been some games that have been like live streamed for a fee, like 10-15 pounds a game, which is kind of expensive, especially in the current situation we're in. And that's a topic we've been having for years and years in British ice hockey. And then there's also my co-host Chris on the Europuck podcast. He's the commentator for one of the teams, and there's like 4 teams in their division, and they're all doing like their live streams on YouTube for free. The Nottingham Lions, give a shout out to them because they managed to get their first win since November of 2019 this weekend, and it was one of the most exciting hockey games I think I've seen in a very long time. There were about 3 or 4 goals scored within the final minute of the game, and then final minute of overtime was when the game-winning goal came. So it was an exciting game to watch, and just to hear my co-host just go absolutely mental. We're having to commentate the whole situation. It was great, and they had so much support. They had like 1,200 concurrent viewers at one point, and that for them that's huge because they're a team that's like they're a lot lower down the pecking order, so they don't usually get as much attendance compared to the other big teams in their area. So it was really nice to see like we're kind of seeing some positive stuff come out about UK hockey now. It's been a long time coming, considering the season was supposed to start in September, October. but we're finally starting to see light at the end of the tunnel for the sport in the UK. But that said, there's been loads of hockey within Europe. Like I mentioned earlier, the KHL season, their playoffs have started now. Literally, game ones of several series were earlier today, or ongoing right now. And pretty much every single other league has had a season in some format. They have had some problems. The Finnish Liga had to shut down for 2 weeks. The French League Magnus has had no end of problems. The Swiss National League had to postpone a ton of games. And the Swedish Hockey League's done pretty well, all things considered. But we're now getting to the point, and Chris and I have mentioned this on our podcast, we're getting to the point where in the next couple of weeks, a lot of seasons are actually going to be done. We're making the playoffs. And I mean, thinking back to September, October, that kind of seemed like an impossible task for a lot of these leagues, but we've done it, or they've done it, you know? So it's great. It's great to see that both hockey in the UK, slow but steady, but we've had plenty of ample replacements until the sport gets up and running for sure in the country again.